of I Take.
D.
I'm Joel.
I'm Carla.
And today we will be talking about communication. And I will start with sharing a scripture. Proverbs 18 2 says, "A fool takes no pleasure in understanding, but only in expressing his opinion." So talk to us about communication. Why do we even choose this topic?
I think this topic is so comes to in our marriage that we have struggled with this so much. And I think there was a perfect topic for us to talk about our own experiences because we struggle so much in our own marriage and our relationship with this topic. And the way we want to do is to kind of break it down in three areas. So first we want to talk about communication when one of us is in need. Like, is how do you have those conversations when one of us is in need? We also want to talk about when the communication, the conversation takes a toll when someone disagrees. And the other one also that I know we always face too as well is when the conversation, the communication between your spouse leads to regret, something that you said that you regret.
You know, I can think about like the first one you said about need. I remember just struggling with that at the beginning of our marriage because, when we got married, I had a month out of the military. And I came out of the military with a comfortable rank. And what I mean by that is that I had Marines that were under me, Marines that were a lower rank. And, in the military, once you're of a higher rank, you pretty much say what needs to happen and there's no question about it. There's no communication, right? There's just, I guess if you want to call it communication, but it's a one-way street. I say what needs to happen, you do it, no questions asked. That's just the way it is. And that's not the way I express myself to Carla, but it was hard for me because I always had to internalize things and say, oh boy, how am I going to share my needs in a way that doesn't sound like I'm being a sergeant at home?
It was important for us to have that kind conversation, but also I had to step back and listen. I'm the one that's always like cutting you off or interrupting you, or I want to say something, I have to say something while we're speaking, and I had to really learn how to listen to my spouse. I had to how to listen to Joel because of his background and how he came and his knowledge in the military and how he practically led the role right there. When he came to our relationship and our marriage, it was a struggle. So I needed to understand where he was coming from before I reacted in any way.
Yeah, it was just difficult, we found ourselves, you having your own style of communication, me having my own style. That's the other thing, there's no time, I can't think of any time in life where someone sat with me and said, this is how you communicate. And now knowing the definition of communication, which is, an interaction, the exchange of something, and information, but also one of the other definitions is to connection. No one ever sat with me and said, hey, communication is about connecting. I learned most of that through just, seeing my parents or interacting with friends, maybe in school, maybe in the neighborhood, with the family. And it's just, it's difficult. It's difficult.
It is difficult. And especially, what my background and where I came from, coming from an independent life, we also now lead to certain things in our conversation when we lead to regret. Have you faced that challenge with you and your spouse that you say something that you regret? And I know we have experienced it in our own relationship.
Yeah, we have. I probably shared this before with others who've been at one of our sessions, and if I sound redundant, please forgive me for that, but it's the one that comes to mind, and it's when we were getting ready to hit our 10th year anniversary, and Carla kept sharing with me how excited she was. We're getting close to our 10th year anniversary, and I didn't say a word about whether I was excited or not. But here's the thing about communication. Communication doesn't just have to be words. It can be nonverbals. It can be the way you act, your facial expressions. And so what she started getting from me in my nonverbals was that I wasn't excited about us meeting our 10th year anniversary. And she would throw hints in here and there of like, oh my God, we're getting close to our 10th anniversary. What are we gonna do? And it wasn't until we actually got into an argument about, her sharing with me like, you weren't excited about our 10th year. And after we got into an argument and we're going back and forth, we finally realized within each other like we're not getting anywhere. And so what we did is we started talking. She asked me. That's really what broke the floodgates of. She said, "Why didn't you feel 10th year was important?" And what I shared with her was, it's not that I didn't feel 10th year was important. It's that in my life, in my background, here's the filters in communication. In my background, I've always seen my parents. I don't know what it is to have, and thank God, I feel I'm very blessed for that. My parents are going on 40 years of anniversary. They've been married for 39 years. And so to me, the big time to celebrate like your marriage was like, meeting 20 years, meeting 30 years of marriage, 40 years of marriage. And that's what meant to me. Like, not that 10 wasn't a big deal, but that I was looking forward to our 20 and 30. And I shared that with her. But then when I asked her, like, why was 10 important to you? You shared with me.
Yes, because, before I want to share that, it's important for us to know our individual backgrounds of our spouses.
Yeah.
I think that's the critical thing when it comes to communication. When you don't know each other's background really well, or even begin to start learning about their background, that's when the challenges in our communication began. So when I began to share, Joel, this is why 10 is important to me. I come from a family who many of our family members were not even married. And if they did get married, they didn't even get married for that long. My own parents, for example, were married for 10 years. 10 years is they got divorced when I was, really young. And for me, meeting that standard, oh my God, we made it to 10 years and we're good and we're moving forward. It was a big deal to me because many of our family members in my lifetime have not even made it there. And seeing that and him understanding my background, what marriage meant to me at this point in 10 years, it was more of, this is a big goal, this is a big achievement that we have accomplished together. So I wanted to celebrate that. But if he didn't know that background, that piece of my history, the conversation would have not gone anywhere.
Yeah, and I think those, again, goes back to the filters in life. When I talk about filters in communication, I'm talking about a lot of times we jump into conclusion or we make our own assumptions. And it's not that it's malicious. We make our own assumptions or we jump into conclusion based on history in our lives, things that we've gone through. It could be our family background. We're both from Puerto Rican families, but she was born and raised in Puerto Rico. I was born and raised in the U.S. She comes from a single mom home. I come from, mom and dad being in the home. There's so many things that kind of bring filters that wouldn't allow us to connect. Again, one of the meanings of communication, one of the definitions of communication. So how do you get through all that? Is to really be intentional about connecting, asking questions, not because you want to be rude about it, but being very tender and intentional about what you're asking. You want to, like, you asked me wanting to know, she was asking me wanting to know, like, why did you see 10 years is like, we got to get to more, and why was, from my end, like, why do you feel 10 years was, like a big deal?
Yeah, and I think it's also it's the nonverbal as well. I'm really sensitive in regards to reading body languages.
Boy.
And the reason for that, again, is my background. My husband comes from a loving and affectionate parents who share and their love for their children and showed it. For me, I come from, after my mom and my dad divorced, as such a young age, I didn't see that affection. And not to say that my parents didn't love me. They loved me. But the way they shared it with me, it wasn't the way my husband's family shared it with him. So for me, body languages was a big trigger point for me. And he needed to understand that. And it wasn't until it came from in our conversations and our communication to each other, it's like, you may not said anything, but your body language told me another thing.
And let me tell you, I still struggle with that as a male. You know, I'm not trying to be sexist about this. You know, I know that some male can read body language very well, and that comes from practice, right? You don't just like, oh, well, I'm a male. No, it takes practice. It takes time for you to pay attention to the details. But man, women can do that so well. They can read body language a mile away. Well, we're like, what? It's ridiculous sometimes. I'm like, man, I gotta learn from the best. Learn from your wives, man. Learn from your wives.
But I mean, that's something that Joe was open enough and really open himself to say, okay, you know, I understand that my body language was not in agreement with you, was not excited enough about it. So, you know, that's something that he learned that he had to work with. And it helped me because now it's like, okay, maybe he's not the type of person that talks in words, but also cannot jump into conclusion that his body languages also mean something else. So having those kind conversations with your spouse are so important.
Yeah, again, knowing that it's about connecting, and you wanna get to know your spouse more and more and more. And why did I share that story of us as a regret? And it's because, you know, once time is gone, you don't get that back. And you know, we only reach 10 years once in our marriage. And for me, now I look back and I'm like, man, I should have honored that from her. Because even, you know, here's the thing with communication. Once you find out each other's side, there has to be some compromising. And we'll have an episode that we'll talk about the art of compromising. And we'll talk about how, you know, when it comes to compromising, you can't be in the mindset of like, oh, I'm going to win this argument, or I'm going to win what I want. It's really about, you know, being able to come together. And in communication is about connecting. And man, I wish I could go back and say, you know what, if to you it's a big deal, then we're going to make it a big deal. But I didn't. Now, you know, we're on our 17th year, and now I got to make up, you know, for when it comes to our 20th year, because that's what I said, right? I said that 20 years is a big deal. I better make sure that I come in with all the bells and whistles for our 20th anniversary. I don't know. We'll talk about that.
And I also want to share with couples out there that are listening, you know, and tuning in. What about if I'm not a person that likes to talk? I'm not vocal. I'm not the person I can't sit down and have a conversation. I don't like confrontations. You know, it's important because it's a big key in our marriages to be able to communicate effectively. Yeah. Even when you're not vocal, it's important to express to your spouse how you feel in regards to your need, because you don't want to say anything that you're going to regret, or, you know, or where you disagree. It's important to have that. Actually, it's one of the biggest issues of divorce. You know, aside from being financial, communication is a big trigger for divorce, because couples don't get to know each other. What Joel and I would have been able to know certain areas of myself and his background if we didn't have that communication with each other. So it's important. So for you out there that say, well, I'm not a person that talks, it's important to talk to that person you said in the altar, I'm going to be with you until death do you part. That's the one you make that commitment to. So it's important that the commitment of communication also is value in that relationship.
You know what, hon? Like, I hear you. I know that for some of us it's very hard to express our feelings. It's hard for me. I can express that I love you in so many different ways, but when it comes to like conflict, it's very hard for me. And maybe it's something of my upbringing. Like we avoided conflict, and I just didn't know how to address it. But I challenge you, because, you know, when we're not good at something, especially like in sports or anything like that, we're quick to like, you know, train, and if we need to lose weight, we're going to do this and we're going to do that. Well, the same thing happens with communication. If you're not good at communicating, then you need to practice. And I needed to challenge myself, so I challenge you too. If that's an issue that you have, if that's something that's not allowing you to connect with your spouse, then work at it every day. Write notes to your spouse. You know, look in the mirror and express your feelings in the mirror, and find out, you know, little by little what ways you can have better communication.
That's right.
So, you know, again, you're on I Take D. This is an area of communication that we just talked about. If you have a question that you want to share with us, please send us a private message and we'll try to answer that privately. If you feel that we can have that conversation live or on our Facebook page, let us know and we will do that as well. Until next time.